Now I want to do a weight comparison before the install. We want to see what the rotors weigh to see if I added or gained some rotating mass. Now for the 6 pistons, we have a 340 millimeter rotor, and for the 4 pistons, we have a 325 millimeter rotor. Alright, so GiroDisc came in at 19.6 pounds. Now, let's do the DVA. DVA, nah, it can't be. It also weighs 19.6. Supposedly, I'm gonna reset this to make sure that it is the same exact weight. Yep, that's crazy. So they both weigh 19.6 pounds. Both the rotors weigh the exact same, and the GiroDisc is a 340 mil. This is a 325 mil. So both of them, like I said, are much lighter than the smaller WRX rotor, which the stock rotor is 315 millimeter, and it still weighs 21.5 pounds. So huge upgrade, whichever setup you decide to go with. All right, so the wheels are off the car. Now I just got to remove the caliper, remove the rotor. So for the bolts that are holding the caliper, you're gonna need a 19 mil. And then for the one holding the brake line to your coilover, that's a 12 mil. Now, since I am reusing my brake lines, I don't have new ones, and I don't feel like disconnecting from the hard line because those are really easy to strip, which I did strip. I think it was this one out of the 4 I did. That one I slightly stripped it, but I'm gonna have to disconnect from here, which is gonna leak a good amount of brake fluid, even though I am gonna clamp it. What I'm gonna try to do to cover the caliper, this is the wrap, the plastic that they gave me the calipers with. So I'm gonna try to tape it all off. That way I don't get a ton, if any, brake fluid on the powder. But let's see if it works. So I'm gonna swap brake lines over first, then leave that sitting here, and from there I'll grab and install the rotor. this one out of the way. Looks like I got it guided in. Yeah. All right, well, somewhat worked. Still got a bunch of oil, fluid everywhere, but it looks like the caliper was protected. All right, so let me see. There is a tiny bit of brake fluid. For the most part, honestly, it's worth it. Definitely worth it to tape them off and use that wrap technique because it's clean. It's damn clean compared to what would have leaked on it if I didn't wrap it like that. So if you want to take the extra couple minutes to do this, it's definitely worth it. These are freshly finished. I really didn't want, brake fluid is just really corrosive. It'll eat through anything and it's really hard to get off of stuff. So if you can avoid it, it's definitely worth it. All right, guys, so it's been a few minutes and there's no leaking at all from the caliper. Pistons are all sealed. Bleeder valves dry, and the brake line banjo also dry. So now we can move on. We are gonna get the rotor on. As I'm sure you guys know, wipe down your rotors with brake clean. Once they're on the car, it's really hard to get to them. Not that hard, but it's just so much easier to do it right here off the car. All right, I should be good to go. Let's get this. Perfect. Damn, that shit is fucking dope. I am just gonna use a couple lug nuts to hold it in place. When I do this and I put the caliper on, I am gonna leave a little bit of wiggle room. That way I can move the rotor around if I need to. You want a little bit of play. If you're wondering, these are Project Kicks monolith lug nuts, also powder coated. My Bulletproof mostly can't really powder coat lug nuts. Most of them are anodized, but since these have the key goes on the inside and not on the outside, so you don't have the socket banging on the finish, this goes on the inside. It will work with these and they look sick. All right, so got that a little loose. Caliper, it's not leaking at all. And as I mentioned before, the same exact bolts are gonna work from the 4-pot to the 6-pot. In the previous clip, I showed you guys that you can modify your dust shield. So if you don't want to buy a new one, you can cut slits in this, bend it, and cut off the excess, and it's not going to make any contact. But I wanted to actually buy a new one, replace it, and once I found out that they would bolt up, I did that. So this one is for 18 to 21 STI. This is the part number. This is for the right side. On the left side, it's the same part number, except it ends in 10 instead of 00. So I could have left it like this, like I said. If that's what you want to do, that's not a big deal. But I wanted to replace it. I just think it looks cleaner. Since this one bolts up and clears everything. And they're not that expensive. These were $25 each before shipping. So if you can go to your local dealer, you can just have them order it if you have a dealer close by. That way you don't spend any money on shipping. But they were, I think, like 25 bucks each. All right, guys, so for brake pads, I went with the GiroDisc brand. These are their magic brake pads. The reviews are really good. They say they have a great initial bite and they have really low brake dust. So from what everyone says, the Brembo brand brakes are hella dusty, hella noisy. These are supposed to be really quiet. The compound, it looks good. It looks like it's like a semi-metallic maybe. Don't quote me, look it up online. But what they do, make sure they let you know, is to install the wear indicator on the back. Because if you install it in the front, you're gonna have clearance issues with the rotor, with the top hat. So the only thing that I didn't love about these brake pads is they came with no hardware. So I mean, no big deal, I'm gonna reuse the OEM hardware. And also no grease, no like lubricant, nothing like that. And they come with pre-installed shims. So all in all, I think it's a solid choice for what I'm doing. If you're obviously tracking the car, you're gonna want something way more aggressive than this. So for these calipers, you're able to change your brake pads without removing the entire caliper. So I'm gonna install the brake pads right now. If you guys are just trying to do a quick brake pad swap, you can follow these steps in reverse. So you just got a pin, the middle bolt, top pin, and this is what puts the tension. You always want to put this top part right here goes above the bolt. So like this, not like that. This metal piece above the bolt. finish punching them in with an actual punch once I get them on the car, but that's basically it. You got 2 pins. The bolt you could leave in unless you're trying to swap out your brake pads while the caliper is on the car. At that point, you obviously have to remove this middle bolt. So I had already installed the brakes, bled the brakes, went out, bedded them in. I just came back to install the proper dust shield. Fitment is perfect. It's not gonna hit at all. I think it looks cleaner. Different brake pads are gonna have different braking procedures. For GiroDisc, basically it says drive the vehicle to a remote area, perform at least 20 brake applications of 3-second duration, use light deceleration with varying starting speeds. Stoplight traffic can work well for this. After the repeated stops, drive the vehicle several miles on the highway with little to no braking in order to adequately cool the components. While on the highway, perform 10 brake applications using light to medium pressure for periods of about 5 seconds. After the above process is completed, the system is ready for normal use. I've had other brake pads that it's much different. It'll be like go from like 50 miles per hour down to 10 5 times, and then do 60 miles per hour down to 20 5 times, and then probably like 30 miles per hour to 5 miles per hour another 5 times. And then immediately every time after I bed in brakes, I always hop right on the freeway and drive for at least minimum 5 minutes. I try to drive 10 minutes without applying any pressure. That way they're fully bedded in. But I thought it was a little weird that GiroDisc isn't like that, but I use their procedure to bed these in, and I've had zero noises, zero issues with it, so it works. When you go to bleed your brakes, very simple procedure. Don't get scared to do it yourself. It's very simple. You definitely need a helping hand, someone else, unless you have a power bleeder. If you don't have a power bleeder like I don't, you're gonna need one of these. One of these bottles is all you need. You're basically gonna have this hose attached to your valve, and you're gonna get a wrench on your valve ready to open it and close it. So once you have someone in the car pumping the brakes, you're gonna have them pump and tell them to hold the pedal. So you're gonna hold pressure on the pedal while you open the valve, watch the air bubbles come out, close it, and then tell them to release and pump again. You do that over and over until you have 0 air bubbles and you're good to go. My reservoir is on the driver's side, so you always want to start with whichever caliper is farthest away. So if mine is on the driver's side and this is the passenger, I would start with the rear passenger and then rear driver, then passenger, and the driver's side would be the last one since it's the closest to my reservoir. Keep an eye on your reservoir. You always want to top it off. You don't want any air bubbles, any air getting into your system because you didn't keep an eye on your reservoir. And with these calipers, you have 2 ports. You have one here and one on the inside. So when you have caliper with 2 ports, you always want to bleed the inner one first and the outer one last. That's basically the whole setup. You guys can do this yourself. It's very simple. Just take your time and everything will go smooth. Finished the Brembo swap last night, so get to go show these off. Looking crazy. Matching the rear. We just finished setting up the booth. It's looking sick. That's the other homie that's here at the booth with us. I'm just wiping down the car. And when I go to shows, I set this up right here. So that way, with the mirror, you can see the full carbon catback and all the suspension work. I'm just wiping down the car. It should be a dope event. There's a lot of companies here.
As a matter of fact,
it's presented by R1 Concepts, hosted by Showcase.